When you look at this week as a whole, I would have to imagine, or the 6 games as a whole, I would have to imagine that after these 6, you'll have a better idea of where you guys stand.
Yeah, I really do. And sometimes you say that and you end up being about right where you are. And you're like, nothing really got solved in those 6 days. But I think you'll have a much better idea of what you need to do.
You look at your rotation and the way it sets up. You'll have Tanaka, followed by Pineda, and then CC Sabathia coming back. CC Sabathia is a guy that signed a big deal, made a lot of money, had the knee issues that are degenerative issues. They're not getting any better. He could have just walked away and said, look, I can't do this anymore. I can't function the way I used to. But he did the exact opposite, and every time continued to battle to come back. And you look at him lately, he's really thrown the ball out.
Yeah, I think a little bit of us were surprised how quickly he came back and how successful he was when he came back and started wearing the knee brace. The first start, I think he went about 80 pitches. His last start, he won 111 for us against Tampa, and has thrown two very good games, which teams that have given him some trouble, Baltimore and Tampa. And CC loves to compete, and that's the thing. I've been saying about CC, he was going to be really important to us down the stretch because he's been through this, he knows how to handle it, and he loves to compete, and that's what you're seeing him do.
How much do you see him talking to other pitchers that maybe haven't been in this situation before?
Pitchers, players too, and catchers, and just sharing his knowledge of the game and what it means to play this time of year, because we have a lot of guys that really haven't been through this. When you think about, we have some players that are really successful, but Didi's never really been through this. Adelin Betances has really never been through this in a sense, and Wilson went through it last year in Pittsburgh. Chashin Shreve has not been through it. Andrew Miller is tested, but Michael Pineda has never really been tested. So we're having to deal with that as well. Even though we have a lot of experience, there's still a lot of young players that mean a lot to our team that haven't been in a pennant race.
When you look at Pineda, he hasn't pitched particularly well since coming off the DL. It's really been up and down for him. Any rhyme or reason as to why he hasn't found that consistency?
It's hard to say. This is as many innings as he's thrown in a long time. And, the 2-week DL probably helped him in a sense, the 3-week DL, because then we didn't have to worry about his innings. But his slider is so key, and it's just keeping everything together. And like I said, this is more innings than he's thrown in a long time.
And then Masahiro Tanaka, a guy that really, down the stretch when you've needed him so far, obviously quite a ways to go yet, but he's come up big.
He really has. And, he's never really been through it here, but he's been through it in Japan. And he's been the guy that has been expected to lead his team, to be the ace, to throw, some playoff games, 140, 150 pitches, then come back in relief, the next couple days. So he is tested from a mental standpoint. I know it's different here, but I do like the fact that he's been through it.
You mentioned Adelin Betances, and it makes me think of the bullpen as a whole. The last month, they really weren't quite as sharp as they were earlier in the season. You look at their ERA combined, over 4, 20th out of 30 teams it ranks. Does that concern you, or is it just a matter of this is where you are in the season? Sometimes guys get tired, but as you go down the stretch, they'll kind of start getting some of that adrenaline back.
Well, that it's going to balance out. I mean, that's the one thing that But I mean, obviously there are concerns about fatigue. It's been a long season. These guys have worked really, really hard, and you try to get them their off days when you can, but they're so important to us winning games. I mean, that's our formula. We hit home runs. We hit 3-run homers. We get to the 7th with a lead, and we turn it over to Wilson, Betances, and Miller. There's our formula. And other guys have had to do some things to step up to sometimes bridge the gap, but that's how we win. So, yeah, we are worried about them, and I think there's a lot of bullpens that are probably going through this time of year.
How stressful are the days when you don't have a Betances, you don't have a Miller, you don't have a Wilson?
Well, you have to think a lot harder how you're going to get through it and match guys up, and that's the tricky part this time of year because of what I said earlier, where there's so many pinch hitters. So you bring in the lefty to face the lefty, and they got 4 right-handed options, where during the season they wouldn't have that, and they would have to face, the lefty would have to face the lefty. So it becomes much more difficult.
You look at this time of year, a lot of excitement, obviously. What's your favorite part about this time of the year?
I think watching the guys compete, watching guys come up big like a Slade Heathcott did the other night in Tampa, and how excited everyone was for Slade or Greg Bird with the big RBIs that he had, the one against Archer, and then he hits the home run late. seeing how excited players get. It's almost like they're little kids again. They're all running out of the dugout, and I think that's what I love watching.
With Greg Bird, huge shoes to fill, and Mark Teixeira, I spoke to you a little bit after the game in Tampa about this, but the hits that he has had have been some very big and meaningful hits. Could you have asked for much more from a 22-year-old?
No, I don't think you can. I think for the last 3 weeks or month, he's led our team in RBIs and runs scored, and you can't really ask much more. And he had huge shoes to fill, and Mark hit fourth in our lineup, and Greg hit sixth or seventh for us, but he's come up big. It's hard to replace a Mark Teixeira. I mean, you just can't, but Greg's done a pretty good job trying.
Let's take a look at, the characters in the clubhouse. Away from the field, I know there are some. I know Brett Gardner's a big one. Who else is a character in that clubhouse?
Well, I think sometimes the pitchers are kind of sneaky about it. About how they go about their business, and they have that, they have like a little brotherhood and a bond, and you have guys that, you have the guys in the bullpen, they're going to keep them loose. You have the guys, they're going to keep them serious. But the best thing about them is you hear them laughing, and they all have their nicknames. But as far as characters, I think you just watch the first hitting group. Brian McCann is a character, and him and Girardi are arguing. You hear Girardi arguing with Headley about certain things. I think Didi's a character who always has a smile on his face. Alex has the ability to always make everyone laugh, inside a clubhouse. So I think Michael Pineda is a character. Sometimes it's quiet, but I think people enjoy watching him compete and some of the things that he does, and they rib him a little bit about it.
Well, Pineda, you said the other week that there's one guy that you wouldn't mind seeing hitting if you had to choose out of your staff, and it was Pineda because of the gyrations on the mound. Well, that wish is going to come true now. You're going to see that. What do you think you're going to get from Pineda? Can he swing it at all?
Well, he's facing a guy that throws 100 miles an hour. I don't.
Do you tell him not to swing? Just stand there. Don't get hurt.
No, I mean, because there might be a situation where you need him to put the ball in play. I mean, those are the sort of things that you have to deal with. So, I mean, you do worry about it, and you do not want him to get hurt. But this is the time of year you have to win games, so you can't be so cautious.